What's up YouTube? Capital G here. Got some new Pendulum Magician action for you guys to check out. Really showcasing some of the plays that the deck still has. Now his competition is maybe not the greatest, so take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. He's playing True Draco Yosenju. I don't really outside of Card of Demise, I'm really not sure what these two archetypes have in common. I'm talking about at all. I mean, I guess maybe the concept is the same as running a mono in True Dracos, where the Yosenju monsters can kind of be like your core normal summon because they can summon a whole bunch of other Yosenju monsters from your hand, and then you can use these spell and trap True Draco effects to kind of get them on the board as well. Maybe that's kind of the mindset here, but I think that Amano is probably just a better pick. Anyways, I think that Pendulum Magicians are definitely still a top 10 deck. I think that instead of super relying on Astrograph Sorcerer to pop off, I kind of feel like Toon Magician will... I mean, that was the card before Electromite came out. Like, this is one of the main cards that they would use because it's a monster that when you Pendulum Summon it, you get an additional monster, and it makes just an instant like Omega. You might start seeing Ignister played more, but let me go ahead and roll this. And yeah, again, guy at the top not playing exactly the most meta deck. So he's playing Pendulum Call. Haven't seen that in a while, but you can see he already has Electromite on board, and Toon Magician is going to be played just as a skill. He can't pop his skill, so he's probably not going to draw any cards, but it's fine. He still gets a massive Pendulum summon off. He's going to go for number 41 Bagusta just to try and slow the duel down. And this card, some of these cards like Pendulum Paradox and some of the other like cards that are basically like +1s, I think that you'll probably start seeing those a little more. Now, I'm not going to lie, Bagusta is pretty hard to deal with if you're playing True Draco, or if you're playing, well, I mean, I guess you could Tribute Summon, but your monster would still be in defense mode if you like Tribute Summon one of your traps. He has a Kaiju, that's fine. He's going to go for Dynamite. I'm thinking of something totally different. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this. He goes for Tiger King, which, not gonna lie, is a pretty nice play. But number one, it does lock you out of Tenki, which I guess he was already locked, or excuse me, he's locked out of Card of Demise, not just because he Exceed summoned, but I mean, I guess the Kaiju locked him out anyways. But if he activates this effect, yeah, he will actually be negating his own Dynamite Knuckle, which that might be a problem. I feel like using that was a mistake because I feel like it just actually did more harm than good, because now when his opponent resolves this Electromite and you want to get Dynamite Knuckles effect off to possibly, I don't know, get your True King return straight from your deck, set it on the field, you don't get to do that. So this Pendulum player activates that Pendulum Paradox, and man, look at all this summoning he's going to be able to do. He's going to activate Ignite Reload. I'm not so certain about that card. I think it might be a little gimmicky. Toon Magician's going to get him another monster. He's going to go for Tornado Dragon, and then Utopia Beyond. He activates Metaphos Fusion. That is really cool because obviously Heavy Metaphos Electromite is a Metaphos monster. How many times? I don't think I've ever actually seen outside of a pure Metaphos deck. Maybe not even in that. I've never seen someone actually use Heavy Metaphos Electromite to go for like Mithrium. That's actually super dope. So Tornado Dragon's gonna start popping cards. Everything on the field is 0 attack, so he can just start doing that work. Obviously 0 attack because of the Utopia Beyond, and he gets a nice little OTK there. I mean, his opponent Tan was not very defensive at all, and again, I think that this deck probably is just more for fun than it is for actual competition. But I'm going to show you guys the Pendulum deck really quickly. I don't think I'll really do that much explaining because it's basically like you're using a bunch of the old cards that people were running before and not so much relying on Astrograph Sorcerers. Obviously, that card is banned now. Okay, so this is what the deck looks like on paper, and it definitely is like throwback. It reminds you of way before Electromite was even a thing. This is kind of what Pendulum Edition decks look like, where wasn't very high trap count, tons of monsters, like a moderate amount of spells. And, this is basically a deck where Curtain Riser and Chronograph are your main two ways of like, those are kind of like your combo starters without having to use your Pendulum summon, or really relying on your normal summon to actually just get Electromite on the field. I'm not used to seeing Bubble Bow Wow like ever, except for in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V show where Yuya used it and whatnot. But everything else I think is just like a lot of Pendulum Magician stuff. You're going to see Toon Magician a lot more. I think this will probably be like one of the main cards that they always want to Pendulum summon. I think maybe this deck is more susceptible to to something like Ash Blossom, which used to not be that good against Pendulum Magicians, but you can Ash Blossom Tomb Magician, you can Ash Blossom the Pendulum Call, Pot of Desires was another card that they didn't really need to run, but now it's a little different. He even runs Foolish Burial Goods, which also is susceptible to Ash. That's mainly, I would assume, for the Metaphos Fusion, where this card basically acts as what's it called, an Upstart Goblin, where you're just going to drop the Metaphos Fusion in the grave, you're going to put it back into your deck, and you're going to draw a new card, unless this gets banished, like before you can activate the effect. It's always going to be just in a simple 1-for-1. And I guess there are other cards like Pendulum Paradox that you can run, cards that are kind of net advantage. But yeah, I think that things like Ignister will probably find their way back into Pendulum decks, just because good source of removal. I like the Utopia Beyond, man. Do not underestimate that card. Usually when you summon Utopia Beyond, it's kind of easy to OTK, especially if your opponent has multiple big monsters in attack mode, because it's kind of like you're attacking directly, because the monsters don't have any attack at that point.